The Blue Hour Confession, Chapter 1. An empty room full of noise. At 03 inches the morning the city coughed, the way old cities do, steam valves hissing along the riverfront, wet tires whispering over slick cobbles, a stray dog shaking rain from its ribs. The call came in then, clean and clipped and 42 seconds long, recorded and replayed before any of us had our coats on, is greater than *** dispatch log. 911 transcript *** is greater than *** time. ** 3 hours, 3 minutes, and 12 seconds. Is greater than *** caller. *** male. Mid 30 seconds, American accent. Is greater than *** content. **. I killed him. It was cleaner than it sounds. You'll find the room if you listen. Unit 403. The Blue Hour is the kindest time, and is greater than *** audio, anomaly. *** metronome ticking in the background, approximately 58 BPM. By the time I got to the address Hanover Mills, a converted factory at the edge of the river, 2 uniforms were already out front, their patrol car idling like a big cat in the rain. You could taste the river in the air, metal and algae, and something colder. The front desk was manned by a night clerk who kept folding and refolding a newspaper as if the creases could hold back whatever was going to happen next. Unit 403, I said. He slid a ledger over without looking up. Freight elevators quicker. We rode the freight elevator standing at angles to each other, me and Park and the wall. Park's jaw worked. He'd been called away from his sleeping infant, and he carried the brittle quiet of people forced to be awake. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I let it buzz. The bulb above us flickered, a tired heartbeat. The 4th floor hallway was white-painted brick and steel-framed windows, long as a confession. We passed a yoga studio, a pottery co-op, a place that made custom neon. Their signs hummed, unlit. At 403, the uniforms, Sanchez and Kim, stepped aside. The door was locked at the knob and deadbolt, both intact. The peephole eye was dark. Locked when you got here? I asked. Yup, Sanchez said. Only sound inside is a tick-tick-tick, like a clock. Oh, Wes. Park knelt, then looked up at me. He didn't have to say it. No pry marks, no splinters. From inside, the metronome murmured an indifferent witness. The key fob the clerk gave us turned both locks with a clean metallic sigh. Park eased the door wide and announced us. Police! The loft blinked awake in the wash of our flashlights, all blank walls and polished concrete, and the faint, sweet, acrid perfume of bleach and oranges. Noise filled the room once we stepped in, not loud, not thick, but ubiquitous. The metronome, yes, perched on a white table like a chapel instrument, its pendulum balanced, its tempo committed to an exactness that felt personal. Other sounds layered underneath, a refrigerator compressor cycling, a compressor again fainter, a neighbor's, the ribbon hiss of rain veil on the window wall. Sanchez gestured toward a speaker in the corner, a square of brushed aluminum and fabric mesh. The little green light on its top was solid. It said cheerfully and with total confidence, ***, the Blue Hour is the kindest time. ***. It said it again every 60 seconds, a room note of menace. Park reached over and unplugged it. The light died. The sentence still seemed to hang there a while, like breath. Who lives here? I asked. Lease, says Elias Navarro. Month to month, Sanchez said. No other names. Yes. The loft smelled too clean, which is a smell you learn. Faint bleach, cut with something citrus to conceal the bleach, to convince whoever comes next that someone who cares about cleanliness must live here. You only bother with that if you're cleaning something you don't want us to see. I moved through the room, gloved, my eyes doing what they always do: count, triangulate, trace. The living area had a sofa that tried too hard, a coffee table made from a palette and glass, 2 shelves of books whose spines looked curated rather than loved. On the wall nearest the kitchen, someone had tacked up a city map, blue twine-threaded pins along the river, crossing bridges, touching 3 warehouses on the east bank, one of them circled twice. The twine had chalk dust on it, the kind that leaves its mark on your fingers and everything your fingers touch after. Navarro's a map guy, Park murmured. Or he wanted to look like one. The kitchen was a 10-foot run of stone, an induction cooktop, a sink deep enough to bathe a small dog. In the sink stood a single coffee mug. It had a lipstick half-moon the color of cranberries on the rim, and a smear where it had been wiped and the wiping had failed. The mug was still a little warm when I hovered my hand over it. I felt the warmth in my palm like a secret. I bagged it. The bedroom was separated by a sliding door on iron wheels. Inside, a bed perfectly made and unwanted-looking, 2 suitcases under it, both old, a closet with shirts hung by color, a pair of boots with dried clay on their treads, blue chalk dust again on the closet threshold, a tiny comet tail where someone had brushed against the string on the map and then touched the door with that hand. Bleach job, Park said softly. He was at the bathroom doorway, his nose wrinkled. They scrubbed like a priest, trying to make a sinner new. They had. The tile gleamed. The grout lines gleamed harder. The tub shone in a way tubs do only when they are about to be photographed for rent listings or after something inside them requires absolution. I took the Blue Star from my bag, the luminol variant that comes in a little spray bottle instead of the old-school mixing bowls that always made me feel like I was about to bake something terrible. I sprayed a light mist across the tiles, the tub lip, the floor. Under blue light, the bathroom breathed stars. Not many, not a gush, but here and there. A comet's tail at the tub drain, a spatter trail like a man clearing his throat. The pattern said a struggle had happened standing, not supine. The droplets were small, fine. A mist formed when a blunt object meets bone or teeth. It looked like someone had been careful to clean, but not careful enough to stop being human. Park stood behind me, arms folded, shoulders squared the way they go when what you're seeing is going to live in your muscles a while. So the call's not theater. Not only theater, I said. Theater with a real prop. The metronome clicked in the other room with the serenity of a sermon. I walked back to it. The casing was walnut, the kind of thing you buy when you want to make an impression at your piano lesson. Tempo set to 58, yes. On its base, faintly, a smudge of blue dust. I bagged it. On the table sat 2 other items, a Polaroid and a ring of keys. The Polaroid was almost art. A grainy, unfocused shot of a man leaning against a steel door under a sign that read *** warehouse, 19 ***. He was mid-laugh, head turned, a scar tucked into the crease behind his left ear. His left hand held a sliver of a white corner I knew immediately belonged to the photo I held. I could see where the corner had been torn away, The missing corner had a fingerprint in someone's grease. He'd torn the corner off after the shot, then made sure the torn part was in the shot, like a joke only one person would ever get. The ring of keys had a small blue fob with asterisk asterisk Hanover Mills Freight asterisk asterisk stamped on it, and 3 brass keys of the common boring type you can copy for $2.50 at any hardware store in town. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" Park asked. "That if you wanted us at a particular warehouse, you'd make sure the photograph did the asking for you." He nodded. "Trap? Maybe. Or maybe someone with a trap wants us to think it's a trap while he does something else. That's the game when you say kindest time and call at 3 a.m. We photographed the room, bagged what wanted to be bagged, cataloged what wanted to be remembered. Sanchez and Kim canvassed the hall. A neighbor with a face like a loaf of bread said she'd heard the metronome all evening, thought it was a clock. Another neighbor said he'd seen a woman in a camel coat around midnight, hair up in a knot like a dancer. Another had heard nothing, seen nothing, lived like this all his life. The front desk clerk confirmed no one signed out the freight elevator key after midnight, but his log had a flatness to it that didn't reassure me. People who work nights learn to stop seeing to survive. "The call," Park said when we were back by the map wall. "No caller ID? Blocked. Routed through a VPN?" Noir says. I answered. Our tech analyst, Noor Abbas, had already sent a text, asterisk asterisk, voice print, artificially stabilized. Not a simple voice changer. Samples suggest stitching. Asterisk asterisk. She'd appended a clip. The metronome isolated, his tick clean as a heart monitor. Asterisk asterisk, 58 BPM. Room reverb matches loft dimensions. Asterisk asterisk. Noir says the voice is a mosaic, I told Park. Bits spliced to sound like a man, not a synthetic model, more like collage with invisible glue. "So whoever called wanted to be a ghost," Park said, "or wanted to use someone else's ghost." We found one more thing just as we were packing up, tucked under the couch, the edge of a torn coat tag. I slid my gloved fingers along the floor, drew it out. A stub of white cotton with a brand name blown apart by the tear, but I could read asterisk asterisk, CH blue, asterisk asterisk, and beneath it, asterisk asterisk, Tare weight 15 kilograms, asterisk asterisk, which should have been on a shipping sack or crate, not a camel coat. It smelled faintly of seawater and star anise, the spice you taste in the soup down the block from Wharf Street, where the fishermen drink their tea in paper cups. Noah pinged again. Asterisk asterisk speaker device was actively streaming a routine. Trigger word wasn't spoken. Routine triggered by timer. Asterisk asterisk. That meant the confession was scheduled, not spoken live. The timer was set to 3 hours, 3 minutes. Someone with access to the device had programmed it. Someone in this room, or with this room. "Warehouse 19, Park said. He didn't bother to pretend he didn't want to go. "It's the kindest time," I said. "Let's see what it thinks is kind." We drove through a city where lights had learned to glow without meaning. The rain tightened into a fine gray cord. The river received it. Warehouse 19 sat at the end of a wedge of pier like a stubborn tooth. The chain-link gate was padlocked, but nothing in the world that stands still for 50 years is secure the way people think it is. The freight key from Navarro's ring opened the padlock like it had been waiting for us. Inside, high ceilings bowing like old backs, the smell of rope and oil, pallets stacked with tarps. A white scrawl of chalk on the concrete floor marked boxes that had been moved recently. numbers like coordinates. Park's flashlight found a trail. Blue chalk dust, a smear of it on the edge of an old freight elevator whose doors were sullenly closed. On the elevator's call button, a fingerprint in grease, a perfect oval. Maybe they were daring us. Maybe they just lived sloppy in that 1 second. "Cover," Park said, and drew his weapon. I drew mine. We moved to either side of the elevator doors, muscles keeping score of mistakes we'd made in other rooms in other decades. Park hit the button. The elevator answered slowly, like an animal you don't coax often. The cables plucked their own harp. The doors sighed open. Empty. No trap, no confetti, no welcome banner that said asterisk, asterisk. You figured it out, asterisk, asterisk, which I had to admit would have been a hell of a moment. Just the smell again, bleach cut with oranges, and the iron of water, and a dark ribbon that had learned to be something else. I got low. The floor of the elevator had a drain. Around the drain, the tiniest crescent of dried brown. Under the blacklight, it was a constellation. "These people are tidy," Park said. "They're tidy until they're not." I shone the light at the back wall of the car. Something had been taped there, removed, taped again. The tape residue made an imperfect rectangle. The edges made a frame around absence. And on the lower right, a single scrap of white where the tape had torn something away. It had the same ragged edge as the missing corner of the Polaroid. I took the Polaroid from my coat pocket and held it up. The torn edge married the scar on the back wall the way two halves of a lie love each other. They had taped the missing corner here like a signature, like an oath. "You're being flirted with," Park said, and half grinned without pleasure. I pressed my ear to the cold elevator wall. The cables sang. Below us, the shaft exhaled a cold that felt too steady to be only air. Park and I looked at each other, and then we looked down into the black. "Power?" Park asked. "Cut," I said. "Hand crank it." We found the mechanical crank in a locker whose rust had been rehearsing for years. We slotted it into the pulley like dock hands performing an act taught by grandfathers. Sanchez and Kim arrived and took our positions on the corners with a casualness meant to reassure us and themselves. Park cranked. I took the second crank. The elevator floor groaned, and then it moved, sinking by inches, by huffs, with the obstinacy of old machinery reminded of what it was born to do. The smell came up first, as it always does, the metallic sweetness that means all our flesh wants to be iron again, the citrus the killer had learned in the loft, the bleach that had failed to make the room a church. The car dropped to the second level, the first subfloor. There, on the concrete in front of the elevator mouth, a single shoe lay on its side. It was a woman's flat, camel leather, a sliver of white cotton tag torn, the letters asterisk, asterisk, C, H, Bluey, asterisk, asterisk, laughing at me. We cranked again. The car sank. At the third level, the light was poorer, the dark thicker, the city further away. The chalk smears were heavier down here, as if someone had cupped chalk powder in their palm and used it to mark the path for a person who couldn't afford to lose their way. We stepped off the elevator with our weapons drawn, our feet listening. The corridor opened into a storage bay as big as a chapel. Racks of pallets rose like pews. On the far wall, someone had drawn a map with chalk, the same blue again, a cousin to the twine upstairs. It was our city shrunk to a child's scribble, the river a serpentine line, the bridges like staples. 3 warehouses marked. Warehouse 19 circled twice. Around that circle, a constellation of small X's like a rash. At the center of the floor, illuminated by our lights, The way a body in a painting is illuminated by a painter's love, lay a man. He had been posed more than placed, his arms crossed on his chest, his head tilted to show the scar tucked behind his left ear to the room, to us, to whichever God keeps score for this kind of theater. His eyes were closed. On his chest, a metronome ticked at 58 beats per minute, like time itself had been conscripted. It had no business ticking. It wasn't wound. Someone had modified it with a cheap electric motor glued inside and a lithium battery taped like a tumor to its belly. Taped to his left hand was the missing corner of the Polaroid, affixed with blue tape as if the killer intended to keep our grief inside a neat square. "Eli Navarro?" Sanchez whispered. Park moved closer, careful, watching for wire, for the glint of glass, for the hush of a trap. He knelt and held his hand above the dead man's mouth. The air didn't stir. The metronome counted out its own untroubled life. I crouched opposite Park and looked at the fingernails. Clean. He'd either been a careful man or he'd been cleaned. There was adhesive residue on his wrists. Tape used, removed, used again. The adhesive had pulled hair, left the skin peeled. "Call it," I said to Park, because my voice wanted to be practical. Park did. The words were old friends. They spoke back to him. The room listened and did not answer. I stepped around the body, careful not to clip the metronome. On its base, the same blue dust ground deeper. A tiny nick in the wood as if someone had set it down hard once, then decided after to be gentle. The man's face was unmarked except for the faint bruise on the corner of his mouth, the kind that means a hand had silenced him hard or he'd bitten himself while trying not to scream. I wanted to be wrong. Detective work is not a science of wanting, so I kept moving. Something glittered beside his left ribs, a tiny shard of clear plastic. I tweezed it up. The little triangle had a printed part number, small enough to have broken from a phone case. In the elevator I'd sniffed iron and oranges. Down here the iron stood up and shouted itself, and the oranges had been reduced to an echo. The bleach, always the bleach, sanitized everything but not enough of my mind. "ID?" Park asked. Sanchez handed me a wallet from the man's back pocket. The leather was new and unwilling to bend. Inside, a state ID, asterisk, asterisk, Navarro, alias, asterisk, asterisk. 41 years old, donor heart icon red, beside his name, address, asterisk, asterisk, Hanover Mills Unit, 403, asterisk, asterisk. Crisp bills in a money clip, 1 credit card, 1 diner frequent buyer punch card with 2 punches, a small Polaroid of a gray cat. The cat looked into the camera as if cats can be recruited to testimonies. "Navarro's missing his phone," Park said. "And his fear," I said, because people like Navarro usually carry fear like a coin in their pocket, and his absence felt designed. We worked in concentric rings then. We photographed and measured and argued softly and made an inventory of the room and what the room had done to us. We bagged the metronome, we bagged the shard of plastic, we bagged the blue chalk residue that had learned our names by now. We called Dr. Solano, who came smelling of night and eucalyptus and crouched beside Navarro and spoke to him like he could answer. She touched the bruise at his mouth and nodded once, as if someone had confessed something to her and she was deciding whether to forgive. "No defensive wounds," she said. "Tape residue. He was restrained, unrestrained, restrained again, probably moved after. That bruise is consistent with smothering pressure. Nose and mouth covered. The time, given lividity and temperature, is within 2 hours. So yes, 3 amperes, M, is plausible. She glanced at the metronome. Cruel little joke. We all tell jokes to avoid saying what we mean, I said, too softly. We traced the chalk map on the wall. The 3 warehouses marked were 12, 19, and 27. Warehouse 12 had burned 6 months ago. Suspicious, never solved. 27 had a renovation permit in limbo, the kind that gets stuck when the lawyer stops answering the phone. 19 had now become a chapel for a tired God. The X's clustered around 19 drew a circle that, if laid on the map upstairs, would fit neat over a neighborhood where men with money had lately learned to wear wool caps and call coffee roasters by their first names. On Navarro's right shoulder, beneath the jacket, a stitch in the lining had been cut and hand-sewn again with thread that didn't match. I slipped the seam and found a flash drive the size of a thumbnail taped to the inside with surgical tape. On its casing, someone had scrawled asterisk, asterisk, 33, asterisk, asterisk in blue Sharpie and drawn a tiny metronome. You got a pocket for secrets, Navarro, Park said. You just met someone with deeper pockets. Nor can look, I said, and slid the drive into an evidence bag. I caught myself tasting star anise again and turned my head toward the corridor. A sound, faint, high, like a kettle forgetting it's on. It resolved into the soft squeak of rubber on concrete, shoes. I raised my weapon and moved, parked to my left like he'd been born there. The squeak did not run. It stopped. A shadow leaned out from behind the rack of pallets. The shadow made a hand, and the hand made a badge. Easy, said the shadow, and became Detective Lieutenant Kirk, who ran narcotics like a man coaxing a jealous river. He lowered his badge, took in the scene, made a face human and sick. We got a call, he said. Anonymous. Said to meet a man who wanted to talk about a shipment. You beat us by 5 minutes. We got a call, too, Park said. He jerked his head at Navarro. Looks like he was waiting for everyone. Kirk moved close enough to see the corner of the Polaroid taped to Navarro's hand. Son of a... He stopped himself. He looked at me. We had climbed different ladders in the same storm. You know this guy? By file, I said. Navarro used to pull archives for lawyers. The kind of guy who can whisper to old paper until it talks. Did a lot of work for the city before he didn't. Before he didn't? Kirk asked. Before he got loud about who paid him to find what, I said. Before he started a little newsletter where he wrote about shipping manifests and who signed for what, wrote like a man who had never been scared of anyone who owned a boat. Kirk's eyes slid to the chalk map. You're going to tell me I'm in your crime scene, he said, and was. I stepped back toward the elevator because the room had started to feel hungry. The shaft breathed. The metronome had been bagged, but the sound of it kept counting time in my ear, an auditory afterimage. On the elevator threshold, the grease fingerprint glinted back at me oval, clean, almost deliberate. I thought of the 3-3 timer. I thought of the speaker, glowing cheerful, while it said the sentence meant for us. I thought of the cat in the Polaroid, and the corner torn off like someone had wanted to teach me how partial things can be. Noir messaged, asterisk, asterisk, pulled logs from smart speaker. Timer created from phone app at 1:21. Device signed into account under alias. IP traces to municipal Wi-Fi node by Riverfront Park. Photos on the app include one cat. Asterisk, asterisk. Another message, quickly. Asterisk, asterisk, voice mosaic uses pieces from Councilwoman Marin's public speeches. The I killed him piece is from I Killed Him with Kindness, speech, 2019. Rest stitched from other phrases. It's purposeful. Asterisk, asterisk. Councilwoman Marin, I said out loud before I could stop myself. Park turned. Sanchez looked up from his notebook. Kim stopped writing. Explain, Park said. The voice the caller wanted us to hear wasn't his, I said. It was bits of her. They built a confession out of her words and timed it for 3-3. Used Navarro's device to make it happen by itself. They made sure the metronome's tempo matched the room so Noir could match the echo. They wanted us to be clever and be led by our cleverness. Kirka gave a low hiss. Marin. Running for Mayor Marin? The one, I said. The one who's made enemies of people with money and people who hate people with money. We stood there while the city raised one more secret and offered it to us like a coin between forefinger and thumb. Dr. Solano zipped Navarro into the bag of a man who had made a mistake and had it made for him. The bag whispered against the floor. It sounded like paper. We took photographs of the chalk map, and then we took the chalk itself and bagged it, because I wanted to hold the tool the killer had used to draw our attention. Park exhaled the long way. On the way out, past the freight elevator and the chalk X's and the rubber squeak and the river that had never learned to stop being a mirror, we almost missed the final joke. On a steel support beam near the door, someone had written with blue chalk, tiny as the whisper of an apology. Asterisk, asterisk, listen better. Asterisk, asterisk. Outside, the rain had given up pretending to be mist. It fell like a pinion. I looked back at Warehouse 19, and it looked back at me with its square windows like eyes that knew where I slept. The city coughed again, or maybe it sighed. My phone buzzed. Noir again. Asterisk, asterisk, flash drive content previewed in isolated machine. Folders named Blue Hour, Tare, Kindest. Files include scans of manifests, payments, and a list of names. One file is a recording. It's labeled An Empty Room Full of Noise. Asterisk, asterisk. The title of the file was A Dare. It was also an invitation. I didn't hit play right there under the rain. I held the phone in my hand, and the cold went from the phone into my bones and kept going. Park leaned against the patrol car and looked at me over its roof and said, "You hear it? The metronome?" I said. He shook his head. "No. The city. It's set to 58 tonight. Oh." We drove back through the river's reflection and the neon's repetition and the people who live between both. The loft at 403 would be sealed and guarded, and then unsealed, and then press entered, and then sealed again. The chalk map would be replaced by a photograph, and then that photograph would be replaced by a silence. The cat would end up with someone who loves cats, maybe Noir, who thinks she doesn't but always does. At my desk, under the bad fluorescent that tries to make everyone a suspect, I plugged the flash drive into a laptop we keep off the network, a laptop that never remembers anything after it's closed. Noir had sent the recording file separately, a copy layered inside Paranoia. I clicked it. There was a room. You could hear it learning your name. The metronome ticked at 58 beats per minute and then, for 2 seconds, stopped, and a breath filled the gap the way water replaces the displaced shape of a boat. Then a male voice, not the mosaic, not the Marin-stitched voice, but an actual man said, conversational as a bartender at last call, asterisk, asterisk. Listen better. He keeps everything under the river. He calls it Tare, the weight of what you pretend doesn't count. Asterisk, asterisk. The breath again. The metronome resumed. In the background, faintly, the sound of a man laughing a loop of it, perfectly mechanical. The wordless half-laugh of the photograph in front of Warehouse 19. The recording ended. I looked at Park, and Park looked at me, and for a second it felt like being 10 years old and standing on the bank and deciding whether to jump, knowing how cold the river will be and jumping anyway. "Marin?" Park said. "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe someone who wants Marin to become a word that means murder." My phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. A text that said, asterisk, asterisk. "Do you understand the difference between net and gross? Between Tare and true? Ask who signs for what. Ask why Warehouse 12 burned. Ask who taught Navarro to be careful, then more careful, then not careful enough. Asterisk, asterisk." I wanted to ask the phone what it wanted. Instead, I wrote the words down in my notebook because paper still feels like evidence in a world that's always erasing itself. The city made its noises. Somewhere, a neon sign warmed to orange and faded back to sleep. At 5:1, the river fog had turned the color of milk. A rower stroked through it like a blade through cloth. My coffee cooled while I watched the fog try to invent a new city. On a different morning, in a better story, I might have gone home and slept. The blue hour was over. The kindest time had delivered what it had to deliver. We had a body posed with a metronome, a voice made of other people's words, a map traced in chalk to 3 warehouses, a flash drive full of names, and a question written in tiny blue letters on steel. Listen better. I could still hear the metronome when there was no metronome at all. That's how the first day of the case began, with a sentence stitched out of other sentences, a dead man who had preserved his secrets under his skin like contraband, and a clock that had to be reset by force. I did what I always do when the cases gets too theatrical. I made it small. I thought about the lipstick half moon on the coffee mug and how it had been wiped and failed to be wiped. I thought about the camel coat and the knot in the hair like a dancer's. I thought about star anise and the fishermen and the paper cups, and whose hands had learned to smell like that because they could not afford not to. I thought about a woman running for mayor whose words had been used like a weapon someone else got to pull the trigger on. I went to see Councilwoman Marin as the city woke, because if somebody wants me to listen to her voice, I might as well hear the real thing say something that isn't, "I killed him." Her office on the 3rd floor of the Public Works building looked out over the river. Hers was the only window without blinds drawn. She was already standing in it. The river forgiving her for free. The city making a case that it had never killed anyone at all. When she turned, I saw the tired in her eyes and the stubborn in her mouth and the fear disguised as anger under that. She held a paper cup too, and it said asterisk asterisk blue hour coffee asterisk asterisk on the side, because sometimes the world commits to its bit. "Detective," she said, and nodded at the chair. "You're early." "Someone made a recording," I said. "They made it using your speeches. They set a timer. They wanted your voice to put their cruelty in our ears." She took that in. Then she did what people who live under cameras do. She chewed the inside of her cheek and then turned it into a smile that had learned to be brave. "Then let's make ours louder," she said. "Let's talk." Outside, the fog was burning away from the river slowly, but inevitably. The kindest time was over. The time for counting began. Chapter 2. Tare wait. Councilwoman Marin poured half her coffee into a potted ficus and said nothing while it steamed the dirt. Outside her window, the river was sweating off its morning fog like a laborer, one layer at a time. "You said the word Tare," she began, voice paper-cut clean. "Navarro said it first. In July, he walked into my office with a backpack of documents and a way of speaking that made the walls lean in. He said the port's problem wasn't what came in, it was what didn't count." "Tare," I said. "The weight you subtract because it isn't supposed to matter," she said, with a kind of anger that had learned to pass for clarity. "He said someone was building a business out of subtraction." Her desk was thick with maps. Not the pretty kind, the kind with pencil ghosts ground into their paper, the kind that look like they've been folded and unfolded on the hoods of cars. She tapped one with a chipped nail. "Interceptor tunnels. Old storm sewers under the eastern piers. We've been trying to line them, but budgets are stories you tell yourself so you can sleep. Navarro said those tunnels were being used as, what was his phrase, a second inventory, the Tare." "He gave you names," I said. "He gave me a theory," she corrected. "He was careful, then more careful, then not careful enough." Her eyes went to the river as if it had stopped being scenery and started being sentence. "Detective, we made an enemies list without meaning to. I introduced a bill in September to require audited Tare weights at the port. It's stuck in committee because the committee chair is allergic to my voice. Warehouse 12 burned 2 weeks after I filed it. Before the fire, a subcommittee hearing mysteriously moved from 3 p.m. to 3 p.m. I remember because a reporter made a pun about the blue hour. She looked at her empty cup. We tell jokes to avoid saying what we mean. "You met Navarro last night?" She blinked once. "He texted at 8:15 p.m., said he had something that sings. We were supposed to meet this morning at 8. He didn't show." She was either an excellent liar or a bad one. There's not much distance between those. I watched her mouth when she breathed. It was stubborn. "Who else knew?" I asked. "My deputy, Aubrey. Aubrey Lynn," she said. "She schedules me, keeps me from accidentally promising my liver to donors." "Why?" "Nomen him. Because a woman in a camel coat with her hair up like a dancer drank coffee in Navarro's kitchen last night," I said. "And the lipstick she wore was the color you're wearing now." Marin lifted a knuckle to her mouth and came away with a faint cranberry arc. She stared at it like it had made a confession without consulting her. "Aubrey wears this color," she said quietly. "She buys 2 at a time. She calls it not quite brave." "Phone number," I said. Marin rattled it off. Then, as if the river had turned and pressed a palm against her window, added, "She wanted me to drop the Tare audit. She said she was getting calls at night. She said the voices were polite, AD. And, prodigal, so see." Noir picked up on the first ring, sounded like she hadn't slept, and also like she never intended to again. "I'm already on Aubrey Lynn," she said before I asked. "Transit card pinged at Hanover Mills 241. No exit ping on the way out." She didn't tag on a bus or a train. But a rideshare account linked to her house email ordered a car 4 blocks from the mills at 3:19. Driver ID is fake. The photos are of a real guy, but the account's brand new. The phone used to order it is a burner. "You want the fun part?" "Please," I said. The same burner triggered Navarro's smart speaker routine at 1:21. GPS shows it later near Riverfront Park. The municipal Wi-Fi node used to stitch that voice mosaic. It's a carousel. The burner moves between the park, the mills, and Warehouse 19 like it's got a list to check off. Oh, and the flash drive's folders are a treasure chest. I skimmed, Manifests from a firm called Chariot Blue Logistics. A shell under a shell. A list of weights and Tare declarations all in neat 15-kilo increments no matter the shipment. Star anise, seaweed, rubber boots, all with the same Tare. She yawned in a way that sounded like a gun being cocked. There's also a folder named 12 and 20 PDFs with the word inspection in their title that don't match what the city actually inspected. Send me 12. And the manifests, I said. I ended the call because if I kept Noir on, she'd solve the city while my back was turned. Marin's gaze was steady. Detective, if I am being framed, make it worth the cost, she said. If I'm not, make it clean. You don't get clean, I said. You get true. She laughed once and for real, and it made her look younger for a second. True is the only thing I'll accept. I left her with the river. Outside, the fog had burned away to a sky so pale it felt like paper. Park waited by the car with 2 coffees he hadn't wanted and a smile that hadn't been born yet. News? He asked. Chariot Blue Logistics, I said, which is probably our **CH blue ** torn tag. Navarro found a Tare scam. Warehouse 12 burned after Marin filed an audit bill. Aubrey Lynn was at the mills last night. A rideshare drove away a ghost at 3:19. Where's Aubrey now? Park asked. Nowhere, I said, and let the word be as heavy as it needed to be. We spent the next 2 hours asking the city to tell on itself. It obliged, but only as much as cities ever do. Noir pulled traffic cam stills. Aubrey's camel coat turning from the mills into River Street at 3:08. The hood of a black sedan, idling in a gutter mouth that led to one of the old interceptor tunnels. The sedan's fog lights purled, dulling the slick. A maintenance truck with the city seal rolled past at 3:12 and paused too long in front of Warehouse 19. The driver's face had the generic handsomeness of men on false IDs. In the freeze frames, the blue chalk on the warehouse floor glowed like bruises. We rolled the flash drive files on an isolated laptop. Chariot Blue Logistics was a snake eating its names. Formed 5 years ago, owner of record, a grandmother in a county that did not exist, bank accounts laundering themselves between Delaware and indifferent islands in a short, efficient loop. Warehouses 12, 19, and 27 were all leased through Chariot subsidiaries. The Tare declared on nearly every import was exactly 15 kilos, like a prayer. Tare weight is supposed to vary. Sacks, crates, pallets, wood, steel, plastic, the weight of the container and its binding and its gilt. This Tare didn't care about reality. It was a number they'd decided on after lunch, and in row after row, the declared ***, gross ***, minus the declared ***, Tare ***, produced a ***, net ***, that if you actually put the contents on a scale, would never square with the truth. The arithmetic left a remainder that had to go somewhere. Under the river, the recording had said. The elevator at 19 has a drain for a reason, Park said, leaning over my shoulder. If you've got a tunnel mouth near the shaft, you can trundle pallets down, pop a grate, slide what you need into the old interceptor belly, and come back when no one's watching. The remainder learns to be weightless, but to stand. And when someone files a bill that would make weight real again, I said, you light one of your warehouses on fire and call it an accident. Noir's message chimed. Asterisk, pulled a voice from the flash drive. Same one as the Listen Better recording. Longer cut. He says, He calls it Tare because he believes in amnesty. He's a municipal romantic. He thinks the river absolves him. And then he coughs. Background audio matches, pump room, the old East siphon, asterisk, asterisk, a link, blueprint, pipe diameters that made me feel a kid again, counting with my finger because the numbers were suddenly too large to carry. "Let's go meet the romantic," Park said. "Bring Solano and 2 paramedics," I said. "Bring Kirk too." He looked at me. "You want narcotics present for a drug tunnel?" I shrugged. Let him see what romance looks like. The East Siphon had been poured in 1932, when men built things like they were going to be gods forever. The access hatch sat behind the old cannery, a rectangle of rusted steel set into a patch of concrete that had learned to be permanent. The padlock was city issue. The city had not issued it to me. Park popped it with a tool that had saved us time and regret before. The hatch lifted with a moan like a large animal complaining about its back. Cold air rose, full of that damp metallic persuasion that lives where water and iron have made a home together. The ladder rungs were slick. I placed my boots like I was laying down statements I might later be asked to defend. Park followed. Behind us, Sanchez and Kim, then Dr. Solano with a kit bag, and the paramedics with theirs. Kirk's flashlight made the walls nervous. "Cute clubhouse," he said. "No chalk on the invitation," I said. At the bottom, a tunnel big enough to make a man feel small if he'd been pretending otherwise. The siphon ran like a vowel beneath the street, its belly cupping a ribbon of residual water that muttered to itself. The air had the flat taste of places that never get daylight. On the wall, chalk marks bloomed the way mold blooms, X here, X there. An arrow the color of a schoolboy's hands. We followed the chalk. I kept thinking of the message on the steel beam near 19 asterisk asterisk, listen better, asterisk asterisk. I tried. I filtered out the drip and the scurry and the city's rolling consonants above us. There, under it all, faint, the steady throat clearing of a pump somewhere downstream, once every second, and something, a living metronome. 58 a minute, my muscles said without asking me. We came to a junction where the tunnel bulged into a room that had forgotten what it had been built for and had gladly learned its new name, cash. Pallets sat stacked 3 deep, wrapped in the blue-tinted plastic you see around honest shipments. Star anise sacks grinned with their tiny printed flowers. Seaweed bales wore shipping tags that proclaimed a tare of asterisk asterisk, 15 kilograms asterisk asterisk, with a confidence I found insulting. Park slid a sack with a knife designed for fruit and found, under the top layer of spice, phones. Dozens. Cheap mid-range handsets with their SIM trays removed. Another sack held surgical gloves with a tiny, precise hole cut in each thumb. Another, memory cards floating in a briny bath inside sealed pouches. Another, bundles of folded plastic sheeting, meticulous and unassuming. "What is this?" Sanchez asked. Not to anyone in particular. "The logistics of making a city say the wrong names," I said. "You don't move heroin anymore and expect to sleep well. You move voices. You move fear. You move the tools that turn a sentence into a linchpin and a woman's speech into a weapon." Kirk picked up one of the phones, turned it on, watched it light and asked for a language. "This is cute," he said. "Phones. And you got anonymous calls last night, Lieutenant?" I asked. He smiled like a man showing a dog a card trick. "If I tell you I always do I win a prize?" Noir's voice, tinny in my earbud. Asterisk, asterisk. By the way, that maintenance truck that paused at 312, not city. Plate on it belongs to a car owned by a judge's nephew. The seal's a magnet. The driver's name is a man who never existed until 6 months ago. He opened a Chariot Blue account the same week. Asterisk, asterisk. Kirk, I said, and didn't put anything in my voice. He looked at me and didn't put anything in his either. The tunnel listened. The pump down the line cleared its throat again. We found the metronome on a crate at the far end of the room, ticking as if someone had hoped we would confuse sound with safety. I flipped it on its back. Another lithium battery taped to its belly like a parasite. Another scab of blue dust. Someone loved their theme, and over the sound of the fake heartbeat, we heard another, the scuff of a shoe. Not ours. Far end of the junction. Park's hand rose, then flattened, then flicked right. We moved. Light cones flaring, voices in our throats turned down to the little channel that doesn't leak. A figure stepped into view and threw up both hands in a motion so exaggerated it felt like theater. Aubrey, I said, because that's who she was. Camel coat, hair in the dancer's knot, lipstick exactly the color of the coffee rim. Her eyes were too wide, the way people's eyes get when their adaptive behaviors have all failed at once. I didn't, she said, and the rest of the sentence had eaten itself. Doctor. Solano was at her side in 2 strides, checking pupils with a penlight, the mother in her outpacing the coroner. She's hypoxic, she murmured. Get her up. Not yet, I said. Aubrey, how'd you get here? She swallowed, and it sounded like glass being taught to be water. Rideshare, she said, except it wasn't one. He said Marin wanted me to take a look at something before the press did. Then he laughed at the wrong moment. He brought me to the hatch. He had a key. He said, listen better. He left me. He said I'd eventually know what to tell you. He said the city absolves what is submerged. Describe him, Park said. Average, she said, and I believed her. Average height, average face. The kind that looks like an actor used to play in Cops. He wore a jacket with a seal on it. She blinked, dizzy. I left the mug at Navarro's because we drank coffee and waited for the timer to tick down to a sentence we didn't understand. I left at 1. I went back at 2 because I couldn't stand not knowing. He was dead. I tried to call, but the phone that worked in that room belonged to the man with the average face. He said he'd help me do the right thing. He brought me here and told me to listen. Kirk's breath did a thing he didn't intend with it. It tripped. Aubrey put a hand to her own mouth. The lipstick had smeared into a defiant wound. She looked at me, then at Kirk, then back at me. He called you by your first name, she said to me. And he called him. She didn't point. But she looked at Kirk like he had become the only thing in the tunnel with edges. Lieutenant. The pump in the distance cleared its throat a little louder, as if it had been trying to be polite. The city above us went on pretending. Get her topside, I said to Solano and the medics, and then to Sanchez and Kim. With you. Now, they went. Their footfalls slurred the water into a rhythm for a few seconds, and then the tunnel got its quiet back. I could hear my blood again, and it was not at 58. Keeps everything under the river, I said to no one and everyone. He calls it Tare, the weight you pretend doesn't count. Kirk's face did a thing faces do when they remember the exact line that will get them out of a room alive. He put his palms up in a priest's parody. You want a villain, he said, and I want a promotion. We aren't so different. It's an interesting speech, Park said, a little on the nose. I can be subtle, Kirk said. And in one movement he pulled the metronome bass free, crushed the battery under his boot, and reached for a lever mounted on the wall behind the pallets, the kind of lever that moves water from one place to a worse one. I had already moved. He was faster. The lever thunked halfway down. The tunnel's air pressure grew a bruise. The water in the siphon belly began to kneel up like a man instructed to rise slowly. Somewhere upstream, steel began explaining itself to other steel. "Don't," Park said, and put his weapon where men put truth when they are out of phrases. Kirk laughed the laugh I'd heard on the recording, the wordless half-laugh. It had been his all along. The Polaroid at 19 was his face, half-turned and uncatchable. The torn corner he'd taped behind the elevator was his signature in absence. He liked to make our evidence perform. "You can shoot me," he said. "You'll still drown, and then a sympathetic story will tell itself without you." "Listen better," I said. "Always," he said, and reached for the lever again. I did not aim at his chest. I aimed at his hand. You lose points for wanting to be elegant when the water's rising. The shot tore the lever handle and Kirk's knuckles together. He cursed, a word that had no parent. The lever kicked back to neutral. Park closed and they went down together, two men older than they believed, boots skidding on damp concrete, weapons clattering away. Their grunts went into the tunnel and disappeared the way anything said in a long old room disappears. I went left to the control panel mounted to the wall like a confession. The labels had been wire brushed off. Men who work in shadows count on you not knowing how to name a thing without its name. Noir's blueprint lived in my head like a good idea. I yanked the cover, found the pump relay, traced the feed with my fingers until I felt the hum our metronome. Old infrastructure has one language. You learn to be literate or you die. I took my knife to the feed like a churchwoman, undoing a stitch, clean and decisive. The hum went out. The water sighed and stopped its rising, as if lately embarrassed. Park and Kirk were still a brawl that looked like a mirror arguing with itself. Park got an elbow in Kirk's throat, and the tunnel ate the sound of a man trying not to choke. I didn't shoot because I liked my partner's face unpunctured. I went in low, put my shoulder into a knee that had been keeping secrets, and the secrets let go. Kirk went over, his skull ringing an argument off the concrete, a bell that no one would be proud to have commissioned. He didn't drown. He lay there and breathed like he had newly invented it. He would get to trial and employ a lawyer and a narrative and a neck brace. He would have a list. He would begin with an apology his mouth did not understand how to pronounce. Some men are more aquatic than honest. They survive everything and learn nothing. But he was ours now, and sometimes that is enough to begin. "Cuffs," Park said, voice sandpapered. I threw mine. He clicked them on exactly as hard as he meant to. By the time we got Aubrey into the ambulance, Sunlight had admitted it existed. She kept trying to apologize for the coffee cup she had left in Navarro's sink. I told her to save her breath for the part of the day that demanded breath. Marin arrived in a car that looked too honest to be a politician's. She saw Aubrey, and her mouth did grief in public in a way that makes you stop wanting to hate elected people. She looked at me over the roof of the ambulance. I gave her Kirk with my eyebrows. She went still, then nodded once, as if the river had promised her something, nothing grand, nothing operatic, just the possibility of a thing not getting worse. Warehouse 12's file on the flash drive read like a love letter to negligence. The origin was recorded as **** Blue Tea Trading, Shaman ****, which existed on paper and did not exist in the world. The Tare column was a scroll of 15 seconds. The inspections were signed by a name we didn't recognize until Noir rubbed it with a digital thumb, and the real letters came up like ink under lemon juice. Asterisk, asterisk, KIRKE, asterisk, asterisk. He had green-lit pallets that had never been opened. He had borrowed a city seal magnet the way a man borrows a cigarette. He had called what was submerged forgiven. We raided Chariot Blue's offices at noon and found nothing but the smell of unconvincing air freshener. We sent a team to 27 and discovered more chalk, more plastic, more of the river's second inventory. We pulled computers that had been scrubbed by a moralist, the kind of cleaning where the heart is more thorough than the hands. We found one thing that mattered, a ledger composed by a man who believed that if he wrote by hand on paper, no thing would ever catch him. Figures, names, a column titled asterisk asterisk T asterisk asterisk, another titled asterisk asterisk TR asterisk asterisk, Tare, true. The asterisk asterisk TR asterisk asterisk numbers matched what the city should have seen and did not. The remainder, the subtraction someone had decreed wholly, added up to a campaign in every city neighborhood, 2 smear jobs, a fire, and a man dead under a metronome. Noir and I sat in the bullpen and listened to Kirk not talk across 2 rooms and a wall. Lawyers are fine carpenters. They make boxes you can live in a long time. He lived in his box and smiled. He asked for a glass of water and then did not drink it. He watched the condensation gather at its base the way a man watches a prostitute undress in his imagination and then refuses to pay. Phones in the cache? I asked Noir. Loaded, she said. Prepped with synthetic voice apps, hashtags, botnets, the whole picnic. You could make any woman say anything if you were willing to be bored long enough. She tilted her head. The Marin mosaic, he had an artist on that. This isn't random. This is production. Someone's going to name their PR firm asterisk asterisk Blue Hour asterisk asterisk before the week is out. Who signs the checks? I asked. She showed me the ledger again and tapped a name. Asterisk asterisk ES Driver Redevelopment LLC. Asterisk asterisk. We'd seen it before. Insurance payouts from 12's fire had arrived at its account with the promptness of obedient dogs. Its managing director's signature looped in the lower right, like a man who takes pride in flattening loops. Asterisk, asterisk, Jasper Klein, asterisk, asterisk. Klein's face lived on billboards with slogans about live work play. His smile had learned to hold thin drinks and fatter ideas. We went to see Klein and his smile in a conference room with glass walls that wanted to be expensive. He wore a wool cap because that is what men who flip warehouses into lofts wear when they are in open-plan offices instead of boats. He offered us coffee in cups that said asterisk asterisk Blue Hour CO. Asterisk asterisk because I had been wrong. Someone had already used the name. I make neighborhoods, he said, not metronomes. You make fire, Park said. Klein folded his hands like prayer had gotten productive. My lawyer will be here in 5. You already hired him, I said. We passed him in the elevator. He laughed in a way that admitted nothing and wanted to. Lieutenant Kirk and I have worked together, he said. He helped ensure the safety of my properties. If he is entangled, I am horrified. As you can see by my brow, he lifted it a millimeter. But I am a generous soul, detective. If one of my subcontractors has made me look small, I will go very large on the story about it. Tell me about Chariot Blue, I said. I like the color, he said. I took a Polaroid from inside my coat. Elias half turned in front of Warehouse 19 and slid it across his table. The torn corner absence warmed the glass. "He was careful," I said. "Then more careful. Then not careful enough." Klein looked at it and did the very thing I was expecting and hoping he would not do. He touched the image with his thumb, flat, full. Some men cannot help wanting to smudge proof that isn't theirs. Some men do not believe in forensic adhesive as a theology. Park slid a bag over the print. We would have his thumb now, polite and in blue ink on a card that would live in a room the public does not see. Klein smiled brighter. "You're charming, detective," he said, and raised both hands like Kirk had in the tunnel, like a priest and a defendant share a school. "You built an economy out of what didn't count," I said. "You wrote asterisk asterisk T asterisk asterisk in one column and asterisk asterisk TR asterisk asterisk in another, and you told yourself subtraction made you clean? You let a cop with a bent heart ghost your ports and write other people's speeches into crimes. You burned a building and called that urban change. You put a metronome on a dead man's chest because you wanted time to be your brand." I leaned in so the glass walls could hear. We listened. Klein flicked his eyes at the glass and saw his own face and looked briefly like a man who had been told he was late to his own funeral. "My lawyer," he said again, and then his lawyer came in with his thin drink and his thicker idea. We arrested him, not because men like him go to cells for long, but because arrests place names on paper in orders that cannot be undecorated. We took his soft devices, which his interns had already tried to make holy by erasing the sins you can erase, and we took his ledgers, which he had been fool enough to write in a hand we could recognize in 3 courts. We took his wool cap. He bowed to the camera outside the precinct like a minister on an election night and said nothing and everything. He would get bail. He would wear a suit that made him look capable of remorse. He would take up a new hobby, contrition. We buried Elias Navarro with a metronome on the table beside the casket, still and unwound. Noir adopted the gray cat from the Polaroid and named it asterisk asterisk Tare asterisk asterisk, which is either terrible or perfect, and therefore true. Aubrey stood under a tree at the edge of the service and wore no lipstick at all and still looked brave. Park kept his hands in his pockets like he might otherwise reach for a lever and move a river wrongly. Dr. Solano brought lilies because lilies are not subtle. Councilwoman Marin spoke and did not say anything anyone could turn into a weapon without sounding cheap. When the wind moved, the leaves sounded like the city does at 3-3 if you are very quiet. An inventory of small noises that decide to mean something. Back in the office, I listened to the recording again. Asterisk, asterisk. Listen better. He keeps everything under the river. He calls it Tare, the weight of what you pretend doesn't count. Asterisk, asterisk. The voice belonged to a man we had not found. Not Kirke, not Klein. Someone else, the person who had spoken to Navarro softly enough that he had decided to carry a flash drive in his jacket and go to a warehouse alone at night. I had a list the length of a street of men who wanted to be that voice, and women too, and organizations a choir. Crime is a duet when you're lucky. Most days, it's an orchestra. We got 3 more arrests off Klein's ledgers and 1 off the Chariot Blue vendor list. A sound engineer who used to craft campaign spots and who, when we knocked, said the Marin mosaic had been a concept piece. He wanted to know if we liked the timbre. We let him talk until his own mouth wanted to leave him for someone kinder. Kirk made his apology on television. which is where men like him believe absolution lives. He used the word betrayal 4 times and city 9. He never said river. He never said Tare. His lawyer said those were terms of art. I stopped watching when the Chiron began to call him embattled. I like my words with fewer syllables and more blood. We did not get to keep Klein long. He posted enough money to build a bridge you might not trust. He stepped out of the jail with his hair like a plan and his smile like a press release, and got into a car with no plates because men like him can borrow anonymity indefinitely. I put my hand against the cool glass of the precinct door and watched him go and said out loud, to the glass or to myself, "We listen better." It wasn't a wish, it was what we had left. At 3:03 the next morning, I woke with the metronome loud and absent in my ear. I sat on the edge of my bed and waiting for the kindest hour to pass. Sometimes the blue hour is just an hour. It cannot absolve you. It can only show you what the shapes look like before the light steals their edges and turns them into categories you can name without pain. I made coffee and did not put anything in it to make it better. On the counter, my notebook lay open to a page where I had written a column title asterisk asterisk TR asterisk asterisk. The column next to it was blank. I put my pen down and did the only mathematics that keeps me honest. I counted the things that did not count: the coffee mug with its failed wipe, the camel coat, the Polaroid, the lever handle stripped of skin, the chalk arrows, the hole in a glove's thumb, the anonymous text that had not promised safety and had delivered a sermon. I wrote them in the blank column and watched how the numbers stopped behaving like numbers and started behaving like names. When the sun climbed, it found the river right where it had left it, performing its one trick, moving on. The city coughed and then cleared its throat and then told itself it was singing. Park texted me a picture of Noir's cat, whose opinion of us is no one's business. Aubrey sent Marin a calendar invite for a committee hearing the following week. Asterisk, asterisk, audit of Tare protocols, public comment at 3:03 p.m. Asterisk, asterisk. Marin forwarded it to me with nothing in the body of the email but a single sentence. Asterisk, asterisk. Let's count what counts. Asterisk, asterisk. I went down to the river. I don't know why we do that when we're trying to think. Maybe we all believe, helplessly, in absolution. I stood on the pier above the siphon and listened, because a room had told me once to do that, and I have trouble disobeying instructions when they're good. Somewhere under the boards and the water and the city and the story, something ticked. It might have been a pump. It might have been my heart, unoriginal in its timing and unconvinced by its own stamina. It might have been both, keeping time for different parts of the same song. The wind came up from the east and pushed the river toward the mouth where it forgot it had ever been ours. Behind me, the city practiced its lines. In front of me, a rower cut the water like a page being turned. If I'd believed in God, I might have said a prayer. As it was, I did the small, true thing I could. I listened better, and when the hour ended, I went back to work. My hazel stylus fell, and I did not let it break, because I had learned the value of not breaking small things when big things are falling apart. The clearing was very quiet, the kind of quiet that holds heat the way a lidded pot does. Atherin's face had not changed because it does not change, but the air around him had by the smallest measurable unit. It had gone from uninvited winter to cold you could name and therefore dress for. He looked at me as if I had put my finger under a nail, and he could not forgive me and could not stop me. "You fool," he said, and in his voice was reverence, which is a kind of hate. "I loosened," I said, "because I had to say something or I would vomit names." "You did," he said. His glove moved as if he would take it off and then did not. "And now you will carry what I cannot drop. You will have no nights without winter in them." "I did not have them before," I said. "I had lanterns in a sky that bled." The blackberry woman's briars lay flat on her cloak. "Sated." "Payment," she said. "Accepted," the feather-necked man said softly. The child woman went back to sit on her stone and watched me with her 10-year-old eyes, which saw mud in the shape of my mouth and the way my hair had come loose in a curl, and how much of my fear was pretending to be pride. "Bring your ledger," she said. "At thaw." "I will," I said, and picked up the tusk. Aithrin turned without a gesture. The riders moved as one. The court did not leave. Courts do not. They sit and sit and sit until they are the furniture they insist they are not, and then one day the house is a ruin, and they are still sitting, and a mouse builds a nest in the blackberry woman's cloak. I put the book in my cloak and told my legs to go. We did not speak until the trees thinned to a skin and light lay on the ground like an unrolled bolt of pewter. Then Aithrin said, "What you have done cannot be undone." "I know," I said. "You do not," he said. "You will dislike me for not stopping you." He has marked. "I already disliked you," I said, and felt a laugh shake out of me like a loosened stitch. "It is how I know I am not bewitched." "I do not bewitch," he said. "You occupy," I said, and his silence conceded the point. We came to the shore where the lake kissed the wood. The sky was a flat blade. The lanterns had stopped bleeding hours ago. A few lay cold on the stones, round as eyes that had watched too much. Across the water, Blackmere was a line of roofs, a brushstroke. Somewhere in it, Ceres was holding a braid and talking to it because I was gone, and sometimes you have to talk to hair. "Come home," I whispered, and did not know until I said it whether I meant it for my village or for myself or for a debt. "We will go," Aithrin said. He did not say to collect his due. He did not need to. We both carry what we carry. We crossed by the path the lanterns had made, not with their light that was gone, but with their memory. Water bears what you have asked it to bear if you have paid for it. We had. The riders' horses did not wet their fetlocks and did not behave as if this were impossible. They behaved as if it were the cost of being horses in a story that had chosen them without asking. Blackmere did not run. It did not hide. Its doors were open. The bread and salt on the thresholds had been taken in and eaten. The hooks on the square's cross were empty. Ceres stood under the bell with her chin up and her hands at her sides and her mouth pressed flat, so the shape of grief would not nibble out of it and make her smaller. I will spend the rest of my life paying for the way she looked at me then. It was a poor woman's jewel, a thing too valuable to wear. "I brought you a tusk," I said, "because if you do not open with humor, you will open with apology, and that is salt on a wound you hope will not scar." She did not scold me. She did not embrace me. She took the tusk and weighed it as if it were a loaf, then set it on the well's lip and put her hand over it. "3 bridges," she said, eyes on me. 3 watches, bread for mouths that are not. "Paid," I said, and felt the pool under the yews echo me, which is one of the small satisfactions you can live on for a week when you have eaten nothing but fear. Aithrin stood in the square like a winter you invited in, because it would come anyway. The villagers did not cower. They did not stare. They looked at him the way you look at a knife you keep because it is the only thing that will cut the bread you need to eat. 3 winters, he said, and the bell tolled not because a hand pulled it, because words sometimes put weight on a thing and it cannot help but answer, no tithe. The sound went through Blackmere like a wind that had remembered warmth. Old Turn made to speak, and Ceres turned her head, and he swallowed his story like a man who sees a bone in his soup and does not choke. There will be ledgers, I said, stepping to the cross, placing my grandmother's book there like a holy thing and a hammer both. Hours, iron, bread, names, not for shame, for payment. Who counts? A woman called from the edge of the square, and I knew her Joan's wife, who braided her hair too tight when she was angry so her eyes looked surprised. Who says what my hour is worth? I do, I said, and waited for the resentment. If you do not wait for resentment, it will find you anyway. It should be her, said a voice I did not know I would hear before I died. Atherin's, the riders' masks tilted as if to listen better to a man they would die to defend. Because she has chosen to carry the part of it she cannot put down. She? Joan's wife said, and there was the resentment. It sat down in the square as if it had bought bread and would eat it where it pleased. Why her? Why not the council? Because she does not eat stories, Sarah said, not looking at Atherin, looking only at me. She eats psalms, and because she has made a law that made a king bleed. The villagers looked at my hands as if they could see the law in them. They could. The law had left its frost there. I curled them around the ledger and steadied myself on the grain of the wood. It felt like a boat's oar, like a cradle, like the edge of the table where a woman kneads dough and prays to nothing. We will learn, I said, and when I err, I will pay the difference with my own hours. Your hours are not more than mine, Joan's wife said, and the square murmured because she was right. They are not, I said. They are different. I can count in the wood's tongue. That is an hour you cannot pay and should not have to. And what do you want in return? She said, eyes narrow. For your counting. Bridges built, I said. Watches kept. Bread set. And your son to learn his letters so the next girl who counts is not only me. Her mouth jerked, and for a heartbeat grief rippled through her like a fish through a net, visible and then gone. The boy is stubborn, she muttered. So am I said, and Ceres made a small sound that might have been a laugh if it had not been holding itself upright with both hands. Atherin lifted his hand. The air quieted. 3 winters, he said again, and the bell, like an old woman, rolled its eyes and told. At thaw, she will come to the court with her ledger. I will go with her, Sarah said too quickly, as if the words could keep me. No, I said, and it cost me to say it the way it costs a baker to wait for a loaf to rise when the child is crying. Not then. I can be quiet, she said, hoarse. I can hold my breath for hours. I know, I said. It is why I can count. We looked at each other, and in that look lived every morning she had left a crust on a plate and a laugh in the air so I would think the world could be born. It lived there and went on living there because I would not let it be eaten by new law. Atherin turned. The riders turned. The square did not empty. The village leaned in because men love a procession even when it takes them away. I slung the ledger case over my shoulder. The tusk Ceres had blessed gleamed pale as a new bone. The 3 bridges had already begun to lay themselves down in my mind. Which stones, whose hands, what order, how to count the calices and the loaves. Old Turn, I said as I passed the well, and he started as if I had thrown a pebble into his throat. If you ask for a bride in this story, you will be counted for 3 nights' watch for every word. One say he lifted a hand as if to tip a hat he did not wear. "Aye, Ledger girl," he said, and it was the first time he had given me a name that was not a diminutive and not a dismissal. We left Blackmere on a road that had been dirt, and became the memory of footsteps and horses, and then the old path the lanterns had traced. The lake breathed, the woods waited, the sky had not decided what it would be. Aithrin walked at my side and looked neither at me nor away. The riders' masks turned to catch the last of the light, as if they were flowers with wood for petals and a patience older than seed. "You are courting death," he said after a time, which is another way of saying, "You are courting me." "I am counting it," I said, "so it will stop arriving like a drunk at the wrong door." "And if it refuses to answer to your name?" he asked. "Then I will learn the next," I said, "and the next, until it runs out of clothes." He made a small sound, too rough to be a laugh, too close to be a cough. "You have put a season into my hand I do not know what to do with." "I have put a notch in your glove," I said. "Do not get sentimental. It will make the riders nervous." "They have no nerves," he said dryly. "They have wives," I said, and the beak-mask rider stiffened and then made a noise I am almost sure was a snort. Night came. Not bleeding lanterns now, but a sky the color of the inside of a bruise. We did not light fires. The riders made a bowl of their horses. Aithrin and I sat in the hollowness between them and the ewes. I opened the ledger. I set my stylus on the page. I began to write. I wrote 3 bridges. I wrote hours. I wrote bread. I wrote the names of the girls the court had never counted as anything but flesh, and I wrote beside each, paid not in sorrow, but in the units we had agreed to, bread set in spring for mice, watch kept for hares, a boy's letters learned in winter, so that in summer he will write the word mercy where it has been missing. I wrote Saris's name, and the unit for it was Rosemary, and it will always be Rosemary. I wrote Aithrin's, and I did not write a unit beside it, because I do not know what pays for the thing he carries. I wrote mine, and I did not write a unit beside it, because I do not yet know if the way I pay will be worth the cost. When I was done, the book was not heavier. I was. "Sleep," Aithrin said, which is something winter says when it is pretending not to be a knife. "I will count with my eyes closed," I said. "It is the same." "It is not," he said, "but you will do it anyway." "Will you?" I asked. "No," he said. "I do not sleep, I keep his light." "That is a poor life," I said, and because I had loosened him, because I had invited his memory into me and endured it and not broken, I reached out and set my hand an inch from his, not touching. The air between us held the shape we had taught it. It held, "It is the one I owe," he said, "until someone writes a different law." "I am writing," I said, slowly. "Quickly," he corrected. "Too quickly." "You can tell me to slow," I said. He did not. Winter rarely tells summer what to do. It arrives. It instructs with the color of the world. It leaves. I slept. My dreams were ledgers stitched with hair, and winters lined with mint and lanterns that did not bleed but bloomed. When I woke, the lake was gray and the ewes were a darker gray, and the world smelled like a promise someone had stopped believing in and now had to believe in again. I rose. I took up my book, and I followed Aithrin into a day that would read like a law and feel like a story and end with a bell. We did not go home because home had moved. It had followed me into the wood and set itself down where the court could see it and not be able to swallow it in one bite. We walked, and where we walked, paths learned their names. Behind us, the 3 bridges rose stone by stone, hand by hand, watch by watch, loaf by loaf. Ahead, the court sat in its ring of old teeth and made a space for a ledger. Beside me, Winter remembered and did not have to carry all of it. When we came again to the pool, it breathed on my fingers like a small animal that had decided someone might feed it and then did not decide against it. It said, owed, owed, paid, owed, paid. It said my name and did not put teeth on it. It said Athrons and sighed. It said Cereses and let rosemary fatten the syllables until they were heavy and green. The sky did not bleed. It opened. Lantern light, not from glass, but from a thing that remembers how to glow without burning, threaded itself through the yews. The riders' masks turned toward it, out of habit, out of superstition, out of wonder. Athron did not look up. He looked at me. "This will end," he said. "All things do." "I know," I said. "It is how I count." "And if it ends in grief?" he asked. "Then I will owe grief," I said, "and I will pay it. Not with girls, with the naming of it." He inclined his head, the way a man does when he agrees to be measured. We went on. The hollow star had chosen me. I had chosen the hollow star. The world did not soften, it did not harden, it held, and somewhere far under the lake, the bell that had begun to ring the night I went with him learned a new peal, the sound a coin makes when it falls on wood and does not bruise it, the sound a winter makes when it is remembered by 2 throats instead of 1.